Hello, hello, and welcome to PMQs. Me, Graham Hughes. It's been too long. Hopefully we'll get the feed up here. Yay, that worked. That's good. Right. It would help if I turned the sound on, wouldn't it? Yeah, the sound. That's usually helpful. Hang on a second. Oh my God, this is embarrassing. Sorry, Cat just came in. It's distracted me from the main thing of unmuting.
Injured in the rail collision last Friday, I was deeply saddened to learn of the death of the driver of the Corby to St Pancras train. His family have requested privacy, and we should all respect that. I send my deepest sympathies to them at this awful time. My thoughts are also with those injured in the appalling attack in Edinburgh, which appears to be motivated by anti-Muslim hatred. Mr. Speaker, let's be clear, in this country, an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. We will not stand for it, and the perpetrator will face the full force of the law. Let me commend our emergency services who responded to both incidents with outstanding bravery and professionalism in very difficult circumstances. Mr. Speaker, one of the greatest privileges of leading this country is meeting our armed forces, celebrating their work and marking Armed Forces Week. And I want to thank them all for their dedication, their courage and sacrifice to protect our way of life. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. I shall have further such meetings later today. Not today.
I missed what someone said then.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And can I associate myself with the Prime Minister's remarks? Prime Minister, the National Cancer Plan is something that your government can be really proud of. Cancer patients in Wokingham and across the country cannot afford for it not to be implemented or regularly updated. Will the Prime Minister leave a lasting legacy and support my Cancer Private Members Bill to ensure that future governments remain accountable for delivering its targets and ambitions?
Well, can I first recognise his personal experience and pay tribute to his campaign? I'm incredibly proud of the National Cancer Plan, which sets out how we're ending the postcode lottery with more cancer specialists, paying the travel costs of children travelling for cancer care, and investing in technology to drive research into rare cancers. Thanks to our record investment in the NHS, we've the shortest waits for cancer diagnosis on record. He'll be pleased to know that in his constituency, waiting lists in his local care board are down by 40,000. That's thanks to a Labour government and Labour decisions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Max Hall is 14 years old. He should be worrying about school, football, friends and what he wants to be when he grows up. Instead, he is living with a high-grade brain tumour and there is no cure available to him. His parents, Jackie and Stephen, want to know, why are children still being diagnosed with brain tumours and told there's no treatment options available? Why has brain tumour research remained so underfunded when brain tumours kill more children and adults under 40 than any other cancer? And why are families like them left to search for hope themselves? This Prime Minister has done so much to strengthen our NHS. So does he agree with me that we need to move at pace and do much more to offer hope to Max and his family and families like his facing this unequally devastating disease?
Can I just say my thoughts, and I'm sure the thoughts of the whole House, are with Max and his family in what must be the most awful of circumstances. Through our Cancer Trials Accelerator programme, we'll make it easier to launch innovative new clinical trials and find new treatment. And for people like Max, that will mean make young people's cancer a research priority, make clinical trials more accessible, and pay for his travel costs for care. I hope that comes as some comfort, but as a parent, I can't imagine what his family are going through, given the circumstances that he faces. And I know that a minister would be happy to meet Max and his family.
Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Bednall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I associate this side of the House with the Prime Minister's remarks on the horrific train crash, the attacks in Edinburgh, and, of course, Armed Forces Week? I want to start by congratulating the Prime Minister. He's the other party leader who won a by-election last week. Although I think I'm much happier with my new MP than he is. with his. 2 weeks ago, Mr. Speaker, 2 weeks ago, the Prime Minister told the House that the government was funding defence and everything was under control. The very next day, the Defence Secretary resigned, saying the Prime Minister was unable and the Treasury unwilling to fund the defence of our country. What changed?
Well, Mr. Speaker, she references the by-election. I'm very pleased with our new Member of Parliament. Can I also say to her, in Gorton and Denton, the Tories got 1.9% of the vote. Can I congratulate her, because in Makerfield, they got 2.2% of the vote. Just edging past Count Pinface.
Hey, Count Pinface got a mention.
She says they're winning everywhere. At that rate, it'll take them 500 years to get back into power. Mr. Speaker, meanwhile, back on these benches, we've delivered the biggest sustained boost to defence spending since the 1980s. That's £270 billion over this Parliament. That, Mr. Speaker, is a record. The Defence Investment Plan will take that even higher. That's about facing the future. We'll finalise the plan with the Defence Secretary and we'll have it published before the NATO summit.
Mr. Speaker, I think the Prime Minister forgot to mention that in Aberdeen South we got 50%. And he says that he's funding defence. The truth is, he wouldn't be in this mess if his Chancellor had found money for the Defence Investment Plan. The Prime Minister gave her the second most important job in Britain. She was the first female Chancellor. She lives next door to him, but wouldn't even come out to stand by him during his resignation speech. She was too busy getting ready for a selfie with the new leader. Does the Prime Minister feel let down by his Chancellor?
This is the Chancellor who ended austerity inflicted on our country for 14 long years. This is the Chancellor who got the economy growing, Mr. Speaker. She doesn't normally want to talk about the economy. That's because in the first quarter of this year, the UK had the fastest growing economy in the G7. Our growth was upgraded by the IMF and the OECD. Last week, unemployment was down. Inflation was better than better. That is because with this chance we have the right economic plan and we can weather the global storms
better, Sean?
in the war that she wanted to jump into.
Mr. Speaker, they're cheering so loudly. If it's all going so fine, why is he resigning? The fact is, she did let him down. She's the one who snatched the winter fuel payments. She's the one who announced a disastrous budget that killed economic growth. And because of her, once again, a Labour Prime Minister is leaving office with unemployment higher than when he came in. But the Chancellor isn't the only person who let him down. The Energy Secretary is putting up bills and killing jobs. He was, he's not here, is he? He was a failed Labour leader, rejected by the electorate, brought back from the wilderness by this man, and when the going got tough, he jumped into bed with the Mayor of Manchester. It's not the first time he's betrayed someone close to him, is it? But does the Prime Minister think
that was a dig about him taking the job from his brother.
That this treachery should be rewarded by being appointed Chancellor?
Mr. Speaker, the Chancellor and I picked up our party 6 years ago from the worst defeat since 1935. We turned it around and we made it face the country. And we won a landslide general election, giving them the biggest drubbing in their history. To this Chancellor, we've delivered the fastest fall in NHS waiting list for 17 years. We've the money for new rights for renters and working people, and we're lifting 500,000 children out of poverty. Mr. Speaker, the test for every Prime Minister is handing over the country in better shape than you found it. I know I can do that, which is more than can be said for her predecessor, her predecessor's predecessor, and her predecessor's predecessor's predecessor.
Even the one before that.
Mr. Speaker, once again I have to ask, if it's all so fantastic, why is he resigning? And I think it is very generous of the Prime Minister to stick by his ministers because they didn't stick by him. He can say what he likes, but the people of Aberdeen gave their verdict. They gave their verdict on his Energy Secretary by voting Conservative. But to be fair, Mr. Speaker, to be fair, they're not all traitors and deserters. Some of his cabinet have been loyal and incompetent. Hands up if you think the Education Secretary is doing a good job. Even she doesn't think she's doing a good job, Mr. Speaker. Even she doesn't think she's doing a good job. Just, someone did. Just for those who raised their hands, the two people who raised their hands, yesterday a poll found that 0% of teachers think the Education Secretary is doing a good job. 0%. She taxed private schools to pay for more teachers, but the number of teachers has gone down. Yeah. It turns out appointing a spiteful class warrior as Education Secretary was a disaster.
Spiteful class warrior. Typical.
Does the Prime Minister agree?
Sort of thing that you hear from a privately educated.
That he has been let down by her incompetence?
Prime Minister.
The Education Secretary grew up in poverty. She knows exactly what it means to grow up in poverty.
Yeah.
She was once reluctant to tell her story. I know her story. It's an incredible story of social mobility and success. I am so proud that she is sitting there, and so should everybody in this country who cares about social mobility. She knows that for poor children, education is absolutely vital, and that is why it drives every single priority and value that she has. I would have thought the party opposite would recognise and understand some of that, but they've fallen so low they don't.
Mr. Speaker, the fact is that if she knew so much about poor children, she wouldn't have given them fewer teachers. Teacher numbers have gone down. Teacher numbers have gone down. It's amazing. I've never seen this much excitement on the Labour benches. Yes, cheering so loudly while there are 400 knives stuck in his back. Shame on them. Shame on them. They don't like it up them, but they know that what I'm saying is true. And Mr. Speaker, there were times when the Prime Minister tried to do the right thing. He did try to cut welfare. And who stopped him? Those MPs behind him. In the words of the Welfare Secretary, his MPs only want to know who they can tax to fund more benefits. They are not Labour MPs, they are welfare MPs. Does the Prime Minister feel betrayed by the people he got into Parliament?
Sorry, Prime Minister. Can I just say, let us think about the language we're using. I think that'll be the first to leave, please. Can I just say, think about the language we're using, because when we leave this chamber, don't be surprised when constituents feel they can use the same language against each other. Let us show a little bit more decorum and respect to each other. Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was trying to do all of this with as much good grace as I could, but I shall certainly miss these exchanges. I'm very proud of every one of our MPs who, with a landslide Labour victory, coming from all different backgrounds, from all different places across the country. We inflicted the biggest loss on the Tory party opposite in the history of their party. We picked up our party, we turned it around. We had to address what went wrong. We turned it around. We won a landslide victory. She won't even address or even talk about their failure after 14 long years.
14 years! Yay!
Mr. Speaker, he is the one who is resigning because of his MPs. There's no point trying to distract from it. And let's be honest, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has made many mistakes. Otherwise, he wouldn't be going. But he has also been let down. I'm only saying what his staff have been briefing. He has been let down by an energy secretary who is killing industry, let down by a chancellor who is killing jobs, let down by backbenchers who don't understand that government is about tough choices. He U-turned again and again and again to appease them, and now they've abandoned him. And what for? A pair of eyelashes and a black T-shirt. Isn't the truth that whoever is in charge, Mr. Speaker, isn't the truth that whoever is in charge, the real problem is the Labour Party?
Mr. Speaker, 2 years ago, I walked into Number 10 and found a broken economy, broken public services and broken trust in politics. Because of our decisions, my decision, the country is moving in the right direction, a stronger and a fairer Britain, ending austerity, investing in our public services, the fastest fall in NHS waiting lists for 17 years, more rights for workers, more rights for renters, standing with Ukraine, Britain's reputation restored and 500,000 children being lifted out of poverty. Change promised by a Labour government, fought for by a Labour government, change delivered by a Labour government.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My Hendon constituency is proud to sit at the heart of the UK's largest Jewish community in the London Borough of Barnet. But today, many of my constituents, many of that community, are living in fear. In northwest London, in recent months, we have seen Jewish charities firebombed, synagogues attacked, Jewish people stabbed in the street, and all that against the backdrop of a daily drumbeat of abuse and intimidation. I know everyone on these benches is determined to defeat this despicable hatred, and I welcome the actions the government is taking to root out the poison of our anti-Semitism. Can the Prime Minister tell this House what the government is doing, not only to protect the Jewish community in Hendon and Barnet, but to make sure we can live full and proud Jewish lives free from fear?
Well, I thank him for his question. Anti-Semitism is a poison. And that is why I drove it out of the Labour Party. In government, we're acting to drive it out of society. New powers to ban repeated protests, new plans to root anti-Semitism out of our schools, universities and the health service, and new prescription-like powers to clamp down on malign state activity which incites hatred and violence. And we will take further steps. I'm proud to lead this tolerant, decent country and will always fight for the security, safety and freedom of British Jews.
Sir Ed Davey, Leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I associate myself and my party with the Prime Minister's remarks about the horrifying train crash in Bedford and the appalling attacks near a mosque in Edinburgh? Our thoughts and prayers are with the victims and their families. And can I mention, Mr. Speaker, today's review of Nottingham's maternity services, which is truly shocking. I hope the government will rise to this moment and implement Donna Ockenden recommendations in full without delay. Mr. Speaker, can I also recognise how difficult it was for the Prime Minister to make the statement he did on Monday? It's an important reminder as we debate issues robustly in this House that we are all human, and it's something that everyone should remember. Mr. Speaker, as we all know how hard it is when relationships break down with close friends and allies, when even our next-door neighbour barely speaks to us some of the time, has the Prime Minister's experiences opened his eyes to the need to rebuild Britain's relationship with our European friends and allies? Will he advise the right honourable gentleman, the member for Makerfield, to put his EU red lines in the past and adopt our plan for a new growth and defence partnership?
Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud of the fact that we've reset our relationship with the EU and we're bringing it closer together. That is in the best interests of our country, and I know he understands that. And I know that, like me, he's been reflecting on his own career. Given that he had revelations, he turned down a job with MI6. I think the whole House will be wondering what might have been. 00 Davy.
Sir Ed Davey. Mr. Speaker, it's very tempting to respond to that, but I've signed the Official Secrets Act. But I have to say on Europe, when history looks back at the Prime Minister's time in office, I fear that clinging to those old red lines will be judged a mistake. But, Mr. Speaker, moving on, as we swelter through this dangerous heat wave, we see the damage caused by extreme weather and climate change. Schools closed, travel chaos, lives at risk, massive costs to our economy and society. And with our Met Office already warning that future summers will regularly break 40 degrees at even greater human and financial cost, is he alarmed that some parties in this House still follow Donald Trump with policies to send temperatures soaring even higher? So will the Prime Minister warn his successor not to listen to Conservative and Reform voices and instead back our plans to cut bills and tackle climate change?
Yeah. Can I thank him for raising climate change, because it is one of the most significant challenges of our time, and the weather today reminds us just how important it is. And it used to be common ground across this House, actually, that climate change was the generational challenge, and common ground that the UK should be a leader globally on it. And I remember not so long ago the party opposite leading in the COP summit, something that we were able to support. It is a shame that in order to chase reform votes, they've changed their mind, and we haven't got that consensus across the House. But I will always maintain that we must be global leaders on climate change, and we always will be.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning, a mature street tree fell on my house. No one was hurt, but it is another reminder of the results of this extreme heat that we're facing. Today is the hottest June day ever on record. Extreme heat and flooding are becoming more normal, and the government need to stay ahead of this, in our homes, in our workplaces and in our farming. As Chair of the Environment APPG, I'm conducting an inquiry into government preparedness. Can the Prime Minister tell the country what actions he is taking to step up our resilience?
Well, thank you for a question, and it's clear that severe heat waves are evidence that climate change is impacting our country. And we've been working, Mr. Speaker, to coordinate the response, and I urge people to follow the guidance from the Health Security Agency. We're making our country more resilient for the future by modernising building regulations so homes are cooler and better ventilated, building 9 new reservoirs to protect water supplies, and investing record amounts in flood defences and sustainable farming. While Labour is doing that, Tories and Reform want to rip up the Climate Change Act. That is the wrong approach for our country.
Let's Savile Roberts.
Yeah.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Lefarydd. The end of the Prime Minister's premiership comes close on the heels of the end of Labour's 100-year dominance in Wales. People simply didn't feel that his party stood up for them, and it's irrefutable that this too is part of the Prime Minister's legacy. There is a tradition, I believe, of leaving notes on desks for successors. So, will he leave a useful note to the incoming Prime Minister that respect and understanding go a very long way, and that democratic choices, including those of devolution, can't be dismissed?
I shall leave a note saying what we delivered for Wales in these 2 years was the largest ever devolution settlement, the UK's first small nuclear reactor in Anglesey, investing £14 billion in Welsh rail, a pay rise for 170,000 workers across Wales, and I'll end the note by saying we're lifting 70,000 Welsh children out of poverty. Nick Keir Starmer.
On the bar.
Mr. Speaker, my constituent, Jake McGregor Howe, a 16-year-old with everything to live for, has been diagnosed with Friedreich's ataxia, a rare neurodegenerative condition which is cruel and swift-acting. The average life expectancy of people diagnosed is just 37. Despite the NHS's founding principle being that care should be based on clinical need, not ability to pay, Jake's father is crowdfunding to pay for treatment in Germany with a new drug omavaloxolone, which has received clinical approval here but is not available through the NHS. Assessment by NICE has stalled. The condition is not classed as an ultra-rare disease, yet is rare enough that any drug to treat it will struggle to meet NICE cost-effective criteria. So the family constantly have to raise enough money to pay for each round of treatment. And shockingly, Jake has recently undertaken a PIP assessment and been turned down for much-needed support. Families should never have to crowdfund for treatment abroad for a life-threatening disease. So will the Prime Minister arrange for me and other colleagues who have constituents with this cruel condition to meet the Health Secretary and discuss a way forward?
Can I start by sending my best wishes to Jake and his family? The changes we've made to the way NICE evaluates medicines is already increasing access to innovative new medicines. I will make sure that she gets the chance to meet the Health Minister to discuss Jake's case and the related issues.
Sir Desmond Swin.
Mr. Speaker, I hope there's still time in which the Prime Minister will be able to enlighten his party as to the moral of the cautionary tale of Jim, who ran away from his nurse and was eaten by a lion.
Well, can I thank the right honourable gentleman?
What?
He's always most generous. And, Mr. Speaker, I'll never forget that just a few years ago I went on holiday in his constituency with my family, and I was in the kitchen of the place we were renting when somebody leant through the open door, and it was the right honourable gentleman with a bottle of champagne saying, "Welcome to the New Forest," and then he took time to speak to my family, including my wife's elderly father, and to my children. I thank him for his generosity.
Paula Hamilton.
Adversarial nonsense.
Right, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank the Prime Minister for his leadership. One of the concerns that I hear most often from my constituents across Erdington, Kingstanding, Castle Vale and South Oscott is about the rapid growth of exempt accommodation. Properties refused HMO licences in my constituency and across Birmingham are opening anyway as exempt accommodation with very little scrutiny, which undermines local community and decision makers. Will the Prime Minister, I've forgotten what I was going to say. Will the Prime Minister confirm when will this new legislation be brought forward and will it fill the loopholes? Also, will this legislation and its regulations be applied retrospectively so that communities like mine are protected?
Can I thank her for her question? And everyone deserves a safe place to call home. The Housing Secretary has the power to introduce locally led licensing and will consult on these regulations in the summer. Under our proposals, national standards for supported housing will be enforced by local authorities. I'm proud of the action that we've taken to back renters, abolishing Section 21 evictions, expanding the Decent Home Standard and AWAB's law to cover the private rental market.
Jack Rankin.
Mr. Speaker, the first duty of His Majesty's government, indeed the Prime Minister's first duty, is the defence of the realm. The Prime Minister is not responsible for the worsening geopolitical situation, but he is responsible for this country's reaction to it. It is imperative that we can outline to our allies at the Ankara NATO summit early next month how we will meet that situation. There were reports yesterday that he is being pushed to delay again the Defence Investment Plan by the new member for Makerfield's Outriders. Will he confirm to this House that he will push ahead with its publication, confirm that it is fully funded to the level the Chief of Defence Staff said is required, and not to the level his former Defence Secretary resigned over, and in doing so, fulfil his first duty to defend the realm?
That's the first duty the last government spectacularly failed at, because they hollowed out our armed forces. We've already delivered the biggest sustained boost in defence spending since the 80s. That's £270 billion over this Parliament. We will increase that with the Defence Investment Plan, which will be published before the NATO summit.
Rachel Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Following last Friday's train collision south of Bedford, the emergency response from Bedfordshire Police, British Transport Police, Bedfordshire Fire and Rescue Service, the East of England Ambulance Service, Magbas Air Ambulance and other counties' air ambulances, our local NHS hospitals and, of course, railway staff. Their response was swift, professional, compassionate in supporting those who were impacted, especially in such distressing circumstances. This was public service at its best. Will the Prime Minister join with me in thanking all of those involved for their outstanding work in the aftermath of this tragic incident?
Can I thank her and the thoughts of the whole House with the family of the driver who lost his life and those that were injured, some of them extremely seriously. Mr. Speaker, on Saturday I spoke to the CEO of the East of England Ambulance Service to thank his team for their professionalism in responding. and we talked through the nature and the scale of the challenge that they faced in relation to that crash. They were outstanding in the most difficult of circumstances. And by the time I called him on Saturday morning, he assured me they were all back at work and they were all back on duty, dealing with whatever else might happen that weekend, having delivered those that needed to be delivered to the hospitals. I found that humbling. And it is a real tribute to those that responded, as they always do, including, I must say, the local community in this case. But I also want to thank the brilliant NHS staff who are still caring for those who are seriously injured.
Speaker, my children, like millions others, are kicking every ball of the England World Cup campaign. But I, as a parent, are really concerned about their security in this country, along with other Muslim parents. Let me explain why. When a Sikh lady got raped in Warsaw, the perpetrator repeatedly called her an effing Muslim bitch. Whilst there was no condemnation from the minister from the dispatch box, no outcry from members in this chamber who openly call out these matters when the perpetrators are of a different colour. When we had the Unite the Kingdom march calling openly for the expulsion of Muslims in this country, there was no ministerial statement condemning such statements. When this weekend we had 5 members of the Muslim community stabbed on the streets of Edinburgh, there was no ministerial statement of condemnation, no Cobra meeting and no solidarity. Can I ask the Prime Minister, what does this silence say to my children as they wait with abated breath for Harry Kane to bring it home?
He's got a point.
I want his children to feel safe in this country, and I will do everything to make sure that they are. We will all fight anti-Muslim hatred with everything that we've got. An attack on one is attack on all of us. That is what I said at the top of PMQs, and I hope he heard it.
Mr. Speaker. The coal industry social welfare organisation SISWA. It's a miners' charity that was established in the 1920s to support the miners in their communities. It's carried out some incredible work with some incredible employees, but the current leadership team is increasingly detached from its founding principles. Miners' welfare, sporting facilities, community facilities have been allowed to rot, they've been allowed to close with little or no support from SISWA, the charity. And at the same time, SISWA has amassed £30 million in the bank. 30 million, Prime Minister. Does the Prime Minister agree that it's time that the charity faced not only a Charity Commission inquiry, but also a serious reform into the policies, the practices and finances, and should benefit the former mining communities it was founded to serve, instead of constructing a £30 million ivory tower for the future?
Can I thank him for raising this important issue? I know members across the House have raised issues with the organisation directly. It is imperative that these communities are listened to. I understand that the Charity Commission has opened a compliance case. I'll get that confirmed for him. I'm proud that this government has stood up for mining communities, including ending the injustice of coal pension schemes, increasing the pensions of over 150,000 former British coal employees, and I thank him for raising this case.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. US big tech has exploited us for far too long. So I'm delighted that the Met Police followed my advice and pushed Apple and Google to implement the stolen handset blacklist, curbing resales and cutting mobile theft by almost half. Likewise, does the Prime Minister agree it's time to stand up to social media companies and reclassify them from platforms to publishers?
Yes.
Holding them responsible for the harmful and addictive content that they recommend, promote and profit from?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I thank him for his question. He will have seen the action we're taking in relation to social media. The social media ban for under-16s, which has been welcomed by families across the country, strengthening the Online Safety Act to tackle intimate images, abuse and cyber flashing, and closing loopholes in chatbots, and taking on Grok. But there's more to do.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Aldershot and Farnborough, thanks to this Labour government, this week we are bringing the National Armed Forces Day celebrations back to the home of the British Army. But in a week when we salute those who have served and are serving our country, elderly Gurkha veterans were assaulted in the park by our war memorial and told to go home. Will the Prime Minister and the House join me in standing against this despicable attack and commend the heroism of our Gurkhas? And does he agree with me that now is the time to resolve the long-standing issues on Gurkha pensions, as we have been working towards, because the Gurkhas have given so much for our country?
Can I thank her for her question? She's a great champion for our armed forces, and the fact that the national celebrations are returning to Aldershot this week are a testament to her campaigning. The racist attack she describes is utterly disgraceful, and I condemn it, and I hope the whole House will condemn it. We stand with our Gurkhas, who have made an incredible contribution to our armed forces and continue to do so. Mr. Speaker, on Gurkha pensions, ministers have met her, veterans and the government of Nepal for constructive discussions. These will continue, and I pay tribute to her for her dedicated work on this.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I start by wishing Scotland well tonight in their match against Brazil? Following the conviction of former SNP Chief Executive Peter Murrell for embezzlement, serious questions about governance and oversight remain unanswered. The Scottish Government is refusing to establish an inquiry despite clear public concern. The law does provide for UK inquiries into devolved matters where there is a wider public interest. So as the Prime Minister prepares to leave office, will he set up an inquiry with the powers needed so we can uncover the truth?
Is that like a Temu Stephen Flynn behind
Can I
him?
wish Scotland well as well in the upcoming match, and of course England in the third match, a little better than last night, hopefully. But, Mr. Speaker, on this question, it is really a serious set of questions that need to be answered by the SNP and the government, and they simply refuse to do so. They call for transparency and accountable for everybody else when they have giant questions of their own to answer. Nothing to see here, don't want to know, don't want to have an inquiry. Totally the wrong approach.
Speaker, this government's commitment under the leadership and influence of the Prime Minister to tackle violence against women and girls is a commitment that is really shared by many of my constituents. On Saturday, I was out in Llangollen for a Welsh Women's Aid fundraiser organised by community champion Moira Gleed. Llangollen's most Wuthering Heights day ever saw me join 230 plus Cathies, learn a dance routine, all dressed in red, and perform in a streamed performance that went across the world. We've even had some fans from Japan get in contact. I know, thank you. Will the Prime Minister join me in recognising the hard work of Moira, her daughter Rowena, and all of the organisers, volunteers, and importantly, the performers for making this really important event happen?
Well, can I pay tribute to her and all of those that took part? And I'm really glad that it got noticed around the world, because this is what raises awareness. I thought she was going to ask me to join her in the next dance, but if it's simply to pay tribute, I'm very happy to do so.
Richard Paul. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tony Blair suggested that at the beginning of his premiership, he was at his most popular and least capable. Blair talked about ending his time in office at his least popular and most capable. For the sake of people in the South West and across the country, what tips can the Prime Minister offer his successor?
Well, I think the first one would be don't ever inflict austerity on the country. And since he's a Lib Dem, I'd probably add, don't wear a wetsuit.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, you will be aware that on Monday it was Windrush Day, founded by Patrick Vernon, to celebrate the contribution of migrants to our community. Could I ask the Prime Minister to outline exactly what this government is doing to recognise and serve the Windrush generation who did so much to play a vital role in our country's history?
Well, can I join her in marking Windrush Day and thank her for raising this, because this is the opportunity to thank a community that made an extraordinary contribution to our country and remember the injustice that they faced. I'm proud that we've overhauled the compensation scheme to deliver faster access to compensation and justice, provided £1.5 million to organisations supporting claimants, and appointed the first ever Windrush Commissioner to rebuild trust and deliver justice. I'm incredibly proud to lead a country that's built on dignity and respect, and where everyone is seen and everyone is valued.
Wendy Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From slashing winter fuel payments to surrendering the Chagos Islands, this Prime Minister has got every major decision wrong. It's no wonder even his own MPs are now looking elsewhere for the answers. So as this may be, one of his final appearances at the dispatch box? Will he make one final U-turn? Will he scrap Labour's disastrous grey belt policy and help protect the precious green belt spaces and green areas across Aldridge Brownhills? And if not, his legacy will be one that he was the Prime Minister who destroyed so many of our local communities.
I do like the Right Honourable Lady, and when she talks about destroying and legacies, I remember she was the Chief Whip, I think, to Liz Truss. I'm very proud that we are building the houses that we need so that everyone has a base camp for their opportunity and their aspiration, something the last government failed on and we're succeeding on.
Final question, Alistair Strather.
Mr. Speaker, Gareth Southgate's documentary last month spotlighted some of the heartbreaking ways we're failing too many young men growing up in Britain today. But it was heartening to see the inspiring work Hitchin youth worker Dan Gaze was able to carry out with young men in my community who found themselves in hard times. Both Dan and the boys at Hitchin Louth Boys School who were interviewed as part of the documentary I thought were an absolute credit to my town. But how can we make sure we're encouraging more men into teaching and youth work roles so that every young man growing up in Britain today can benefit from these positive role models across their community?
Can I join him in paying tribute to the inspiring community members like Dan, who truly represent the best of Britain? Having an inspiring role model is vital for young men,
Is this the last one?
and that's why we're investing £500 million in our National Youth Strategy, which includes launching 50 new young future hubs, creating more mentoring and youth worker opportunities.
Let the front benches change over.
Okay then. What's the last question? It was like, do you want to do this? Yeah, all right. Okay then. Okay. Well, that's it. I don't think it's his last PMQs. I think that'll probably be next week, or maybe even the week after. I don't think that what's his name? Andy Burnham. I don't think he's going to take over till mid-July. So what is it now? It's the 24th. So we've got the next one is going to be the 1st of July. That'll be the 8th of July. Yeah, and then it'll be away for the summer, I think. So yeah, what have we got? I mean, that was a bit of a, I don't know. I was kind of hoping it'd be a bit funnier than that. Do you know what I mean? Like, maybe it will be when he does his last PMQ. So I don't think that was. He didn't welcome Burnham to the house. Oh yeah, that's a point. We didn't burn him. Anyway, I won't be tuning in for the last one. The self-indulgence will make me vomit. Fair enough, Gallifrey man. To speak to the issue of British politics seen through a football supporter lens, I guess in a way this is like Keir Starmer's testimonial. Well, I guess as it goes towards the, I mean, you know, the last few PMQs that were still headed up by on the Conservative side by Rishi Sunak, he actually started asking sensible questions. You know, in the aftermath of the election, I just think. But then after the first few questions, he started going off piste a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I think we moved from Parliament and we moved from the normal sort of political discourse that goes on in those circles. You got to understand that this lot, right, in Parliament, they go out afterwards and into the pub and have a chat together in the bar and stuff. You know, that I'm not saying they're all bezzy mates or nothing, but you know they get along. They work together on, even across parties. They work together on particular, you know, pet projects of themselves that they've got, and also and committees. Like committees are across bench. So you have Tory MPs, you have Lib Dem MPs, you have SNP MPs in there, along with Labour, and that bicameralism, I guess, is it bipartisanism, or tripartisanism, or quadpartisanism, is something that you really there's not that level of nastiness that you get from the likes of Farage and Trump and their kind of bullying politics. I suppose in a way this is almost like going back to the days of the pre Brexit before it all got really, really horrible. In Parliament, and we had Boris Johnson, who was just a fucking nightmare. Don't forget, Boris Johnson was the guy who said in Parliament, not only did he accuse Keir Starmer of getting Jimmy Savile off the hook, which is horrific that he said that. And if I had been Keir Starmer, I would have sued him. I would have fucking sued him. Made him say it again outside Parliament. But yeah, and also I think the worst thing that Boris Johnson ever said, not the worst thing he ever did, because he did even worse things than this, was when he said that the best way to honour Jo Cox's memory was to get Brexit done. And she specifically was campaigning against Brexit when she was murdered. It's just mind-blowing, the shit they came out with. So I think maybe this is a sign of the way that politics might be getting a little bit back to normal, might be taking a bit of the venom out of it as things go. But I mean, it just depends really on what happens with refuck. But the good news is, like, refuck appear. If you want some good news, well, there's been 6 by-elections since the general election, and the refuckers have lost all of them except one, and that one they only won by 6 votes. This idea that Nigel Farage is going to be our next prime minister and there's going to be this massive, tsunami of support for refuck, it's not borne out in the polls. Makerfield was one of the top 10 targets for refuck to take, and they failed it really badly. They failed in Gorton and Denton as well. They would have failed in Runcorn had Keir Starmer actually bothered to go to fucking Runcorn and drum up 7 more votes. For real, I'm so impressed by the non-nastiness in your parliament. Yeah, I mean, look, for the last 10 years, to be honest with you, Caranola, it hasn't been great. It has not been great. There's been some nastiness, definitely, but it seems to be getting back to the way things work. Don't forget, when people are talking in Parliament, they're not actually addressing each other. They're talking to the Speaker. That's why they refer to each other by, not their name. They can't say you did this, you did that. You've got to say the right honourable gentleman did this, and you've got to use the terms like right honourable. You can't call someone a liar. You can't. There's a bunch of rules, things that you can't do in Parliament. But Parliament is actually the only place, technically speaking, where you can't be done for libel or slander or defamation. And this is why, this is many years ago now, there was a British footballer called Ryan Giggs, and he had a super injunction brought against the fact that he'd been cheating on his wife. And this was all over the papers, but they couldn't say who it was. All they could say was he was an ex-Man United player or ex-England player. Was he England? Ryan Giggs, or was he Wales? I don't know. Ex-Man United player. And there was a MP who stood up in Parliament and went, "It's Ryan Giggs," and then stood down again. And the super injunction didn't count in Parliament because the Parliament has absolute freedom of speech, something that the rest of us don't have. And we make this mistake time and time again. The far right love to go on about this, about freedom of speech, respect their freedom of speech. Except when it's someone else's freedom of speech. They don't like that. They don't like the fact that people who take control of historical homes, they have the freedom of speech to tell you exactly how that home was bought, usually through the proceeds of slavery. They don't want someone to use their freedom of speech in a way where they dress in their traditional religious clothing from where they're from or where their family's from around the world. They don't want that. They don't want that. That's not integrating. We don't want that freedom of speech. They want freedom of speech for them to say horrible things without any consequences. And that's not even freedom of speech. That freedom of speech goes to a certain level, and then you say, well, look, you can't shout fire in a crowded theatre, and you can't expect there to be no consequences. And you certainly don't have a positive freedom of speech like you do in America. We don't have a written constitution, and we certainly don't have freedom of speech in our unwritten constitution. It's not part of it. And this thing that we've had now recently, where these fascists have said we should be allowed to speak on university campuses, even if the university and the student union, the majority of people, in that university do not want us to speak there. We should have a right to go and speak. That's our freedom of speech. And you're like, no. If I turn up in your living room with like a 200-page document about how much of a twat you are and start reading it to your family at dinner time, you'll be quite within your rights to chuck me out your house. It's your private home. Like, if it's a pub, it's your pub. You know, this is why the landlord is a knob. You know, and they can throw you out. I've been thrown out of a pub for singing badly, for Christ's sake. Never mind slagging off the landlord. But yeah, let's go through it then. So we had, I'm going to read a few things. DWP bringing driving bans for people who owe benefit debt. So if you're working as a delivery driver to pay your debt and the DUP want to make you unemployed. That is crazy, isn't it? They want to go after driving bans for people. How about driving bans for Nepo babies who twist the Lamborghini that the daddy bought them around the tree? How about that? We don't have freedom of speech. That's American. We have freedom of expression as long as you don't offend people. Yeah. We cannot count on the Labour Party to champion us, whatever face they wear. Nor the Tories nor Lib Dems and trans allies are busy, being busy washing their hair. We need to get more trans allies. I completely agree with that. We've got a week left for for something to be done to stop this ridiculous guidance going through. It's been 33 days, I think. And there are Labour MPs who are standing up and saying this is ridiculous. The last time I checked, there was over 120 MPs who had signed an early day motion, which was brought in by Stella Creasy and Nadia Whittome, I think. Guidance, early day motion. The two MPs that I can write to, Mary Foy and Ian Byrne in West Derby, Liverpool, they have both signed it. Let's have a look at the motion. Early day motion 240. Yeah. Wow. Okay. The draft code of practice for services, public functions and associations, a copy of which was laid before this House. The draft code for practice of services, a copy of which the draft code be disapproved. Right. I read it quickly and I thought it was like, why is Nadia Whittome and Stella Creasy signing up for this? So we've got Nadia Whittome, Stella Creasy, Kate Osborne, Lorraine Beavers, all of whom are Labour. We've got Marie Goldman, who's a Lib Dem, and we've got Sean Berry has signed it. There are 500, bloody hell. Could you imagine? There's 151 politicians have signed this. Loads of Lib Dems, Labour, obviously the usual suspects like Richard Bergen, John McDonnell, Rebecca Long-Bailey, etc. But also, my MP here, Mary Kelly Foy, also Ian Lavery, what's his name? There's Jarvis of the Lib Dems, Kirsty Blackman of the Scottish National Party, Ian Byrne, that's his name. Ian Byrne, not Ian Lavery. Joshua Reynolds, the Liberal Democrat, Zara Sultana of your party. She's still down as your party. I thought they kind of broke up. Who else have we got? More SNP, Labour, Lib Dem. I'll put the link. These are all the good MPs. Okay, and these are on the side. All this are doing at least something. And if you're have a look at this, and if your MP is Labour or Lib Dem or Green or SNP or Plaid Cymru, please get onto them to sign up to this. We've only got a few days left, but this is 151 MPs. 151 MPs. There's only 650 in the whole of Parliament. So this is a big chunk of the number of MPs that are. This is not quite a quarter, but it's coming up to a quarter of all MPs. I mean, come on. This is if they get how many more votes would they need to be a quarter? 12 more votes, 11 more votes, and it's a quarter of all the MPs in Parliament. So look, even if this stupid draft guidance goes through and it's a fucking disaster, it's going to be a disaster. And I understand that with trans people being excluded from jails, being sent to all male jails, which is fucking horrific for trans women, also being excluded from all women wards on hospitals and stuff like that. Like, that's all got to stop. But at the coalface, the toilets, hospitality venues, gig venues, bars, restaurants, cafes, etc., are just going to take the signs off the doors. They're just going to take, because it's easier than built, it's cheaper, you can either spend 50 grand having a toilet separate, or you can just take the signs off the doors, which is allowed within this guidance, this terrible, terrible guidance, which is absolutely awful. But yeah, we've got a lot of names here, 151 names on the list. I've put the link in the chat there. You can click on it to have a look. If your MP is not on that list, please write to them this week and say, will you stop, will you do the right thing? Will you do the right thing? But there's 2 withdrawn signatures, which is Tim Farron, the Lib Dems, and also Andrew George of the Lib Dems. I don't know why they've withdrawn their signatures. Well, Tim Farron's a bit of a homophobe, isn't he? So maybe he's graduated to transphobia. I don't know. We need more left-wing streamers to talk about it. Only Graham does. Political X, Max, the Troll, all silent, says Black Dot. I can't argue against that, as much as I prod them, and I know other people would prod them as well. It's just something that either they don't feel qualified to talk about, or it just doesn't really occupy too much of their, just imagine for a moment if, I'm not talking about necessarily my mates who do streaming and stuff like that, but generally people on the left, imagine if they cared as much about trans people as they care about kids in Gaza. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't care about kids in Gaza. That's fine. I think they should. But it's possible to be concerned about 2 things at once. If you're concerned about apartheid in South Africa in the 1980s, it's still acceptable to be upset about the treatment of Hindus in Sri Lanka by the Buddhist majority government. Do you know what I mean? But imagine the amount of the forcefulness of the protests, of the amount of column inches and the public, the political oxygen that is used talking about what's happening in Gaza. Imagine just a fraction of that was helping people who are trans not have to deal with this absolute bullshit, this anti-trans tsunami, this transphobic nonsense paid for by the oil companies. Tim Farron is a Christian fundamentalist. Yeah, I thought he was. That's why he got into trouble, didn't he? When he was the leader, wasn't he? She said, David Hughes, thank you for teaching me about freedom of speech for whom and with consequences in the UK. We Americans tend not to study what our law doesn't cover. Yeah, Caranola, and just to mention about Americans, they misinterpret freedom of speech over there. Or I'm not saying you do, but other people in America, they misinterpret it, and some people, willfully misinterpret it as meaning that anyone is free to say anything, and it's not about that. If you have a private setting like a university or a campus or a private members club or something, you can't demand to go in there and read a screed about how much you hate that university or you hate that private members club. You have no right. The government in America can't stop you saying things. That's it. It's just the government. But they're funny how the government find ways around that. When that knobhead, that racist twat who died, he was a right pain in the neck. What was his name? Oh, I don't know. He had that horrible wife, didn't he? Who went out with all the fireworks after he died. I'm grieving. Look at me grieve. Yeah, I'm grieving. Fireworks. Oh, she's a nutter. He really dodged a bullet getting out of that relationship. I've forgotten his name now. Charlie Kirk. That was the one. Anyway, so remember after he died, and if anyone made a joke about it or said, "Oh well, what?" I put a joke up about is it one fewer Nazi or one less Nazi? I could get away with it because I can't be sacked. Thank you, Daddy Google. But people were sacked from their jobs for writing on social media that they were, fairly content with the way that Charlie Kirk carked it. Kirky kirked it. And you know what? I think it was the way he wants to go. This is the guy who campaigned all his life for like everyone to have a gun, people to be able to have guns on college campuses. He said that children should be there to watch public executions. You know, it was all like a bucket list for him as he kicked the bucket. But there you go. Anyway, so yeah, but the idea that we are allowed to do anything we want without any consequences because we're protected by, in America, the Constitution, or in this country, I suppose the equivalent would be saying, yes, it's the Magna Carta, gives me the right. Do you remember during the COVID lockdown, and there were these people like great British patriots, and they were saying that the Magna Carta, this was a document, this is a contract between the lords of the land and the king, then the King John I, to be or King John, there's been any others, King John, to say that you know, that if the king does something really fucking stupid, that the lords can step in and, you know, tell him where to go. It also stressed that there was, you know, even the king had to abide by the law. Up to that point, it was kind of like whatever the king wanted to do. That was great. Well, some of the things that came from the Magna Carta was there's something above the king, which is the law. So if we feel like the king has broken the law, then we can, you know, which we did to Charles I. But the other thing was about this traditional, was codifying the traditional setup with the British Parliament, as it was back then, which was just like two people meeting up a tree or something, which was that the king wasn't allowed to raise money through taxes. That had to be done through Parliament. And you still got the residual of that in the American setup, where the president, you know, the American king, they can't raise revenue, and that's up to Parliament to decide. So when a king wanted to have a foreign war, which obviously cost a lot of money in the UK, they would convene Parliament. And between those moments, Parliament might not be convened for years, decades, between being convened, and then he'll turn up and say, I need some money. And I don't even think this was like a moral thing. I think it was just a practicality, because the MPs had their constituency that they represented, and they could go back to their constituency and say to everyone, hey, listen, the king needs some money for his army. Go and have a fight. Magna Carta is about barons' rights, yeah. The Magna Carta was dissolved by the Pope not long after. He became a martyr. What, Charles I? He hardly dodged a bullet. That's the joke. Sorry, too soon. Kirk said the school shootings were the acceptable price of freedom. And, yeah. You know, well, at least he put his money where his mouth is. And, yeah, he had his big, beautiful day. That guy Kirk also got a thing going about women needing men to tell them who to vote for. Kirk's wife seemed to expand this stupid nonsense 105 years after US women won the right to vote. Yeah. Wasn't Charles I known for having a 10-year gap in his parliament? Yeah, they convened and fucking killed him. I don't know. But yeah, we often look at the Magna Carta as like this foundational document for our democracy. It was to do with the relationship between the lords, the gentry, the barons, and the king. That was it. It's a bit like when we had the Glorious Revolution. Do you remember we had the Glorious Revolution? Do you remember that? Do you remember our Glorious Revolution of 1588? Do you remember that? Great days. Glorious Revolution we had. Do you remember the Glorious Revolution? Was it 15? No, that was... sorry, the 1588 was the fucking Armada, wasn't it? Sorry. 1688, I think. Glorious Revolution of 1688. Yeah, 1688, sorry. I was 100 years out. I was thinking of the Armageddon? The Armageddon Armada. What the hell is wrong with me this afternoon? It's too hot. It's up to 22 degrees here. The Glorious Revolution, the deposition, the deposition, is that the right word? Of King James II and the installing of the stadholder of Holland, a guy called William of Orange, who became William III. Actually, his full title is King William III/2, because he was King William II of Scotland, but King William III of England. Write that one out. And his wife was Mary II. Or was she Mary the First in Scotland? It's a bit confusing, isn't it? You know when Queen Elizabeth took the throne in the 50s, in 1952, right? When she ascended to the throne, was it 52? Was it? Was it 75? No, 70, 50, so whatever the fuck it was. Yeah, it would have been because the first Jubilee was 77, wasn't it? Yeah, 52. So when she came to the throne in 52, there was a spate of vandalism against post boxes. I love the pettiness of this. People would turn up with chisels, like in the middle of the night, a chisel and a hammer, and they would chisel off the royal cipher. You know, I'll show you the rules. Basically, that thing on the front of the post box or whatever. You know, now it's this thing is slightly different, so you can tell the difference because if I show them a bit closer, see this? It looks like a pair of boobs because that's like for the woman monarch, and this is the new one for the male monarch, and that looks like a knob, like a little knob there in the knob head. Gendered crest. No, because it said on the post boxes ER2 for Elizabeth Regina 2. But as far as people in Scotland were concerned, they'd never had a Queen Elizabeth before. So she was Queen Elizabeth I of Scotland and Queen Elizabeth II of England. So at that time, Winston Churchill, who was the Prime Minister in 1952, he said, listen, we're going to have to be sensible about this. So whichever number is the highest out of the two ordinal numbers or whatever you call them, that's it, vaginal numbers, vaginal number, the two vaginal numbers, which one is higher, that's the one that the monarch gets named. So William III was, William III of England, but William II of Scotland. James VI of Scotland was James I of England. James VII of Scotland was. So instead of doing all that, so if we ever have another King James in England, he will actually not be James III. I think he'll be James VIII, because the Scottish number will be the highest one. Did you have a James? We had a James the. Did they have a King James III? No, we didn't. We just had two Jameses, didn't we, in England? So James VI is how the first Stuart should be recognised. No Bolescoff, because it was just going forward. It didn't work retrospectively because it would mean recarving out all of the monuments, just like changing it a little bit to get the regional number correct. But yes, true story. But yeah, people were upset in Scotland that the post boxes had ER2 written on them, and so they chipped it off. They chipped off one of the ones. One of the I's, one of the Roman numeral I's. My faith in politicians has never been lower, says Gallifreyan. We are a week away from becoming an apartheid state, and the Labour MPs would rather talk about dancing in Wales and getting more and more bitter. Gallifreyan, have a look at that link that I just sent. There's 151 MPs who are on your side. There's 151 MPs who are saying this fucking draft bullshit is absolute bollocks. And that number will grow over time if it does get adopted, this guidance, because it's going to be absolutely fucking unworkable. It's not again, it's like the death penalty, or it's like I don't know, most things in politics. It's not just morally abhorrent, it makes no economic sense. It's like Brexit, isn't it? It's Brexit all over again. It's morally abhorrent, plus it makes no economic sense. So there you go. So yeah, I know I'm not. Look, Gallifreyan, I'm not. I know I'm not in the same position as you, and I'm I don't want you to feel like I'm blowing smoke up your arse by saying, "Oh no, it's all going to be fine." I still think there's a fight to be had, but there are people in Parliament fighting for you and fighting for trans people. There are 151 of them across parties, across the SNP, Labour, the Lib Dems, the Greens, signing this early day motion to say this is ridiculous, and they won't stop fighting. because we're not going to stop fighting. Trans people aren't going anywhere. There's always been trans people. There will always be trans people. Seriously interested in what Tyler too. Love Tony Robinson's coverage of that rebellion. Yeah, I just love Tony Robinson. He's a bit of a national treasure, Tony Robinson. Keep that link open. Problem is, as far as I can tell, the government can just ignore it. They might be able to right now, Gallifreyan men, but they won't be able to as time goes on, because this issue will come up time and time again. And like I say, if it was just a moral issue, okay, give it a few years, but it's not just a moral issue. It's an economic issue, because don't forget, right? This draft guidance is so badly written, it is going to put hospitality venues, which are already under a lot of strain since Brexit, COVID, fucking austerity, or Truss's mini budget and everything else that's been going on. They're already under a lot of strain. Restaurants are closing all the time. Pubs are closing all the time. And they want to make all these people who own pubs and own restaurants put in another fucking toilet. They're not going to do it. They're going to remove the fucking signs. And then at that point, they're going to go, this draft guidance, it's not going to be draft anymore if they bring it in, but it's going to be unworkable. You're going to get TERFs moaning about it. It's fucking guidance. Oh, now I can't piss in the toilet without a man in the cubicle next to me pissing all over the seat. I will be writing to my MP. He did vote against the Opposition Day puberty blockers motion on June the 23rd, so he seems to be on the right side, hopefully. Good. Okay, yes, SG, please write to your MP. Edward G. Edward G is my uncle. What? Edward G. Robinson. Cool. What employer is going to want to employ a trans person? Well, I would absolutely employ a trans person. But yeah, the rules are just they're just bonkers. They're absolutely bonkers. So a trans woman's not to use the toilet in the pub that she works in until she clocks off, and then she can use the toilet. Anyway, we're going to just quickly go through the questions, because obviously I've gone on a little bit. By the way, we're just one super chat away from Confetti. Just saying. Oh, there we go for Diz. Woohoo! SG. That was brilliant. I just said it and then it happened. So thank you so much for that. And it does allow me to do this. 3, 2, 1. Confetti! Woo! Yay! Confetti. Thank you. That is very kind of you. Gallifreyan Vent says, maybe it's a professional talking, but all that fight and have been let down time and time again. I've had enough. Gallifreyan Vent, that's absolutely fine. It's absolutely understandable. And it is perfectly natural for you to feel like you've been shat on, because you have been shat on. Let's be honest, right? This is the point where it's not up to the trans community to be at the front line of this, because the trans community are the people who these laws, this relentless tirade against trans people that began 10 years ago. You know, once they got Trump in charge in America, once they got us out the EU, they moved on to their next target, didn't they? But it should be up to trans allies. Trans allies, and if you're a trans ally watching this, please pick up the pace, because our trans sisters and our trans brothers are really struggling right now. Really, really struggling. And I think it should be a case of, you know, us doing the hard yakka. And you know what? I'm not asking you to go and, you know, do some stunt where you climb up the Eiffel Tower or something with a flag. I'm talking about just write to your MP, please. If you haven't done it already, please write to your MP and make sure they sign this early day motion. Is trans a protected characteristic? Yes, it is, Andy. Which is why this whole debate, it just opens up another can of worms, because if you discriminate against a trans person by saying they can't use the toilet that they want to use, you're breaking the law. This trans guidance breaks the fucking law. It's absolutely unworkable. Miriam Margoyles recently said she loves Tony Robinson and considers him a national treasure too. Miriam Margoyles is a great trans ally as well, and so's Pedro Pascal, and so's David Tennant. Jenny Robinson, like you said, unworkable. There are contradictions with other laws. Yeah, it's fucking shite. It's just a bunch of shite made by the inequalities and human wrongs commission is run by a TERF, before this turf, there was another one called Baroness Kirchner who ran it before then, privately educated, of course. And both of these turfs, they're like the dog that caught the car. They don't know what to fucking do with it. They're like, right, okay, we can make laws that are horrible to trans people, but guidelines of how to be horrible to trans people, but we have to keep it within the law. And since being trans is a characteristic protected by the Equalities Act 2010, how are we going to do this? And that's why it's just an absolute mashup. It's an absolute mashup. It's a clusterfuck of a bill. Yeah, one of my earliest TV memories is of maybe in Margoyles playing Tony Robinson's mum in Sam on Boff's Island. I don't remember Boff's Island. I remember Maid Marian and A Merry Men. You can't be sacked for being trans. And if you are discriminated against when you go for a job and you find out that someone with lower qualifications than you did got the job and you didn't get the job because you were trans, you can take that company to a tribunal. We the people will get a few richy riches to quit picking on trans people and everyone else as well. Yeah. We need the rich people. We need the rich to come on board with this as well. But unfortunately, you get rich people who, when they weren't rich, they were nice people. And then they became rich and became fucking horrors. Anyway, let's go through the questions today very, very quickly. So the first question came from a Lib Dem MP, which was a bit weird. It said list your functions for the day, and then the Prime Minister stands up and does that, and then they get a second question. And it was talking about the National Cancer Plan. That being a bit underfunded, can you get more money into the National Cancer Plan? To which Starmer said, record investments into the NHS. Then we had the Labour MP, Lee Barron, who stood up and said research into brain tumours is underfunded in children. And Starmer stood up and said, well, we made it easier to launch clinical trials. So 2 questions straight off to do with cancer. And then the next person to stand up is Kemi Badenoch. She was the leader of the opposition. She is the leader of opposition. First of all, she talks about the Defence Secretary resigning, which happened 2 weeks ago. And I thought that this would have been brought up at Prime Minister's Question Time last week, but it wasn't, because he just wants to bang on about Aberdeen because they had an election to win in Aberdeen. I didn't really understand why they were going on about Aberdeen so much in Prime Minister's Questions last week. It was Deputy Prime Minister's Questions. It's like all 6 questions are about oil and gas off the coast of Aberdeen. And it was because there was a by-election there the next day. Sorry for not knowing that, but I'm not on top of everything. And also, I've got to rely on the stupid English bloody version of the BBC, which doesn't tell me anything that's happening in Scotland or Wales or Northern Ireland, because they don't deem it necessary for me to know in Durham. That's not an excuse. It's just I'm just making a statement. So talked about the Defence Secretary resigning, and then after some bants about by-elections and the fact that the Tories only got 2.1% of the vote in Makerfield. Also, Kemi had a bit of bants because they got a Conservative MP elected for the first time in history, also in the 60s, which is the same thing if you think about it, in Aberdeen South. And which is why they've been going on about Aberdeen so much. To start, and she said, I welcome my new MP more than he does, because his new MP is Andy Burnham. He's going to come and take his job. And then he hit back with bants about the fact that they got 0.8% of the vote in Gorton and Denton, and then you only got 2.1% of the vote in Makerfield, and at this rate you're back in charge in 500 years or something. And then he talked about funding defence, and he kind of bottled the answer. I mean, he wasn't going to give a straight answer on that, because obviously there is a lot of tension in the Labour Party at the moment about defence spending and how much should be allowed to be spent on defence. Next up, we had the question of whether he felt he'd been let down by the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, to which she stood up and said, no, she got the economy going, and he was quite defending of it. And then she had to go at the Energy Secretary, Ed Miliband, had a little sly dig, saying, not the first time he's knifed someone very close to him in the back, referring to the time that he ran for the Labour leadership against his own brother, David Miliband. And then Starmer came out, and just like he did when he was talking about the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, he listed the achievements of Ed Miliband. And then she had to go at the Education Secretary next time, Bridget Phillipson, who I don't particularly like, because I feel like she's a little bit turfy. Okay, so I've got no great love for her. I have great love for any of these politicians. I don't know them. I've got a couple who are actual friends of mine, but not, most of them I have no idea. Some of them I've met once. And why is he resigning? She kept asking, what, if you're doing so well, why are you resigning? If you're doing so well, why are you resigning? And it's like, well, he didn't really answer that question, but he gave Bridget Phillipson his full-chested support. She's talking about how she grew up in poverty, and she's a talisman of mobility and success, or something like that. Then she was asked about, if she knows so much about poverty, why are there fewer teachers now, which is a bit of a low dig. And then she talked about 400 knives in Keir Starmer's back. To which Starmer stood up and said, well, it's the biggest Labour landslide victory, the biggest loss in the history of the Tory party, 14 years of Tory government, blah, 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 blah. And then she asked him about whether he feels he's been let down by his ministers, his backbenchers, and, for the sake of eyelashes and a black shirt, or something. That's how she described Andy Burnham. And that was the sixth and final question, and gave Starmer the chance to just list all the broken policies of the Tories and then list the achievements of Labour. That didn't do much. David Pinto-Dushinsky, who's a Labour MP, talked about the attacks on the Jewish community. And Starmer said, we will stand against these attacks and we'll do everything in our power, blah, blah, blah. Which is a fair enough point, but we will circle back to this in a moment, because there was another sort of almost like a follow-up to this. Ed Davey, Britain's relationship with the EU, talking about, are you going to tell your successor to throw the red lines in the bin? To which Starmer gave a bit of a fucking non-answer. He said he was proud of the reset that we've had on with the EU, but I know for a fact that Burnham is a lot more pro-EU than Starmer is. I think Starmer, we talk about, we'll go through the post-mortem of Starmer's premiership for a long time. But one of the things I think that really stood out was his lack of emotion about anything. He didn't seem to be too bothered either way, whatever happens. He never really seemed to get that passionate about something. And I never felt he was particularly passionate about staying in the EU. Although he did, unlike the previous Labour leader, he did actually join us on some marches against Brexit. The Tories' flagship policy that was going to plunge thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, children, into poverty in this country. And then Ed Davey basically stands up and he says that he's got two questions as the leader of the second biggest party of the opposition. He talked about the damage of climate change that we're seeing all around us right now, denial of climate change from the Conservatives and the refuckers, and what that those voices should be ignored, which I agree with. They should be ignored. And then Starmer got a chance to have a dig at the Conservatives' massive screeching U-turn on net zero. But he didn't really call it that. And this is where I think Starmer has always failed on the razzle-dazzle. Do you know what I mean? It's a massive screeching U-turn that the Tories have done on climate change. They've gone from a party that was pushing for net zero by 2030 to a party that doesn't want net zero at all and doesn't think that climate change is real for some reason. And then we had, Claire Anderson. It's almost as though this was set up. Who's a Labour MP and chair of the Environment Agency. She had another go at the Tories and refuckers, and then Starmer joined her in that. Next up, we had Liz Saville-Roberts, the representative, the head representative of Plaid Cymru in Westminster, talking about Labour's electoral losses in Wales, and talked about getting him to leave a note on his desk for his successor, Andy Burnham. Devolution cannot be dismissed. To which Starmer still said, largest ever investment in Wales and in investments in devolution, Welsh Rail, 70,000 Welsh children pulled out of poverty, etc., etc. Love Kia. I think he put at the bottom, love Kia or something, and people laughed. Paula Barker then talking about drugs that are not available in the UK because of NICE. And Starmer offered a meeting with the health minister. This comes up quite a lot in Parliament and PMQs, where there will be a constituent, and this is the link between the constituency link, and your MP and Parliament, that I think is really, really important, and something that when we do go to a more proportional representative setup, that I hope that remains in place, because Paula Baker stood up, Labour MP, and said, I have a constituent, Jake, who's really not well and can't get the medicine they need, so his parents are having to do a GoFundMe in order to get the money together. And Starmer's offered a meeting with the health minister about that. And then Desmond Swayne stood up. Desmond Swayne, bit of a peculiar one, Desmond Swayne. He talked about Jim being eaten by a lion. Did anyone get what he was talking about? Because I was just like, what? And then Starmer stood up and he said, I just want to thank you for the champagne when you popped around to meet me and my family when we came to New Forest. Because if it's to do with, if it's not a private trip to someone else's constituency in Parliament, if it's something to do with, your job as an MP, maybe getting someone elected or whatever, you're supposed to tell the sitting MP that you're coming to their constituency. That is a nicety that we're supposed to do. There's no law against it, but obviously Nigel Farage and his mates don't just ignore this because they don't have to follow any rules because they're all rich kids who never had to do anything else. Imagine invisibility power with a button click, says Paulie Donkey. Invisibility on. Doesn't NICE exist to stop the NHS buying bullshit things? Yes, it does. So they have to make very, very difficult decisions on what drugs can be made available through the NHS. Hey, listen, we'll have a talk about this next time we do an episode of Fucking Mental. But I was talking to a friend of mine who works in psychology the other day. We were just talking about whether ADHD was overdiagnosed and whether there's too much medicine going out. And there is a big problem in the NHS at the moment with people being diagnosed with ADHD by a private company working on behalf of the NHS because they're being brought in to get down the waiting lists, and then they are not giving people the correct assessment, and then offering them drugs which are dead expensive on the NHS. And that means that the kids who actually need, or the people that need that ADHD drugs, just aren't getting it. Next up, we have Pauline Hamilton. Growth of exempt accommodation. She was talking about HMOs and HMOs, houses of multiple occupancy, and new legislation loopholes, and whether they would be, whether this new legislation would be enacted retrospectively. And Starmer talked about local led licensing for tenants and in the housing stuff enforced by the local authorities. Then we had Conservative Jack Ranklin, who was talking about defence funding and the primary duty of a government is to defend the realm. To which Starmer stood up and went, "Well, you didn't." Sat down again. And then there was a independent MP, Stockart Adam, who stood up and talked about the lack of condemnation of attacks against Muslims. And he had a fucking good point here. 5 Muslims were knifed in Glasgow over the weekend. It barely made a murmur. No one was rioting. But also, I mean, if we are going to get to grips with rising amounts of anti-Semitism and just xenophobia and racism in general, every time something horrible like this happens, it really does need to be, make a big song and dance about it, talk about it. I'm not saying we should be running around burning cars and burning people out of fucking homes or anything mad like that, but it is interesting, isn't it, that a couple of days ago when Jeffrey Robinson was found to be guilty of those horrific crimes as the ex-leader of the DUP in Northern Ireland, crimes against children, there were no riots. No one was running around burning unionists out their homes to protect women and girls. Funny that, isn't it? Oh, was it Edinburgh, DJ Marcy Moo? Okay. All right. Sorry, I thought it was Glasgow for some reason. Stabby Loon should be charged under the terror laws. Yeah, absolutely. And all the people who were burning people's houses down should be charged under terrorism laws. Overdiagnosis of the ADHD and the medicalisation of it is definitely not just an NHS issue. Yeah, well, not to get on my high horse because I'm sure you got other things to do with your day, but I do feel like social media needs to be reined in when giving medical advice, and that goes for medical advice for ADHD and for autism. I'm sick and tired of seeing videos where they're making Barnum statements, as in P.T. Barnum, the great showman, right? That can apply to anyone. You sometimes go to a party and you feel a bit shy and you don't want to talk to everyone. You just want everyone to leave you alone and it's a bit noisy. But then you go to a party and a week later and you're the life and soul of the party and you're dancing on the tables and you know what? And sometimes you've got a drawer with a load of pictures in that you've never sorted out. Sometimes you've thought about starting a book, but you never actually started it because you maybe did a few pages and then all the things got in the way. It's just like these statements they apply to everyone. That's why they're called a Barnum statement. Something so vague and so catch-all. It's how they make money writing horoscopes. They just put these vague sentiments in. Oh, you're going to meet a stranger? Of course you are. You're going to get on a train, aren't you? And we tend to, we always remember the hits and we always miss the misses. But yeah, and also, just before I go off and talk about something else, but with ADHD, it's not being regarded as a spectrum, whereas autism is. But also with autism, I don't know if it's codified into what the spectrum is. And I know it's going to be different for everyone, but there has to be a difference between someone like me who has ADHD, but I'm pretty functioning, I'm in a healthy relationship, I do my shows every day, I get on with my life, and someone whose ADHD prevents them from having a healthy relationship, prevents them from having a home of their own or having a steady full-time job. And that is a world of difference. And I want them to get the support, not me. Do you know what I mean? The best thing for me with my ADHD diagnosis was the diagnosis. To be honest with you, the medicine that I took didn't really touch the sides, didn't really change anything with me. And the whole time that I was writing my book and everything over the last couple of weeks, I've not been taking my medicine. So when I did my 65.5-hour live stream, I wasn't on my medicine at that time. Wasn't taking it. And it was fine. Why can't everyone just live together? It's not hard. Makes me sad. Walks away, head's like, oh, yeah, Pete Denkat. I agree. My mate was diagnosed with ADHD a few months ago, about to get her meds, and that's private. I hate to think what the NHS is like. Just before Starmer arrived, someone asked a question about the code of practice to Phillipson. Have a look. Ooh. Phillipson being a bit of fucking turf. Yeah, schools is going to be a fucking nightmare for this, isn't it? Breaking news from Bedfordshire. Train passed red signal before fatal crash. Shit. Okay. More than 500 mothers and babies died or were harmed at toxic Nottingham NHS trust. A bullying culture. Bloody hell. It's fucking grim. Wow. Europe heatwave live. 94 million people to experience temperatures above 35 degrees C today. Bloody hell. It's so dangerous. Phillipson questions. Equalities and human wrongs. Guidance. Approved the updated Women's and Equalities Minister Bridget Phillipson approved the so Bridget Phillipson's not. Who's the one who's fucking getting mixed up? I thought Bridget Phillipson was the Education Secretary. Did she used to be the Education Secretary? She's approved the updated Equality and Human Rights Commission code of practice, 300-page code of practice. Fucking revisions following further legal analysis requested by the government. Single-sex exemptions. Service providers like hospitals, refuges, and gyms are permitted to operate single-sex spaces based on biological sex if doing so is a proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim. What's the legitimate aim? To make trans people feel like shit. Okay. No routine challenge. Transgender women should not be aggressively challenged about their gender. However, space providers may request documents like a birth certificate in genuine concern cases. What the fuck? What the fucking fuck? General access. Leaving a trans person without any facilities or services is deemed unlikely to be proportionate and could be discriminatory. There you have it. Leaving a trans person without access to any facilities or services is deemed unlikely to be proportionate. You just open the door. So I mentioned the 50,000 you're gonna have to spend on building a new fucking, bog in all these every single pub in the country is gonna have to get a new bog, but they're not gonna do that. They're just gonna take the signs off. But they're just opening up all of these private enterprises to litigation, to being sued left, right, and centre, sued by the TERF for letting a trans person in, sued by a trans person for not letting them in. Do you know what I mean? What the fuck is a genuine concern case? I had no idea. That is just fucking crazy. Should trans people make other people feel like shit? No. But I don't think they do. If Farage's happy gang got power, the US system would be here as well. So there goes our life expectancy. Yeah. Phillipson, said it was going to be monitored by the EHRC. What? Just absolute fucking diddle wank. Bridget Phillipson. Oh no, she is education. Okay, right. So she's education, and she's women and equalities minister. I was getting really confused. I was like, I'm sure she was education. Did I just say she was education? It's hard to keep up, especially when people wear two hats. At least I only wear one hat, unless I'm wearing a very small hat under this hat. You'll never know. You'll never know. TERFs don't understand that evolution works. You can tell because of the purist ideology. All we Homo sapiens have done last is use tech to help us do what other species do, like we do for everything else. Yeah. Does this mean the government has accepted the guidance then? I still think there's time to push back on it. So I didn't see that previous message there from Bridget Phillipson saying that she was going to stand in the way. The guidance has also faced pushback from both sides of the debates. Yeah. I'm trying to find the news. Nothing's come up. Yeah, everything's from 3 weeks ago. Yeah, but I hope Bridget Phillipson's out on her ear when Andy Burnham gets in. Let's just see. Come to Liverpool, all single rooms. It's 27 in here, but outside the thermometer in the sun is showing scary numbers. Yeah. Okay, so going to head over now to the last few questions. We had Ian Lavery from Labour talking about mining organisation, that the leadership team were twats or something. They spent loads of money on an ivory tower. I didn't really understand what he was talking about, but Starmer stood up and said he stands for, Labour stood up for the coal employees. Lib Dems, Martin Wrigley stood up and said he wants to change social media companies from platforms to publishers, which I really, really agree with. Starmer said no, but there's more to do. Not great. Alex Baker, Labour MP, stood up and talked about Gurkhas at a war memorial, given abuse, told to go home. And he also asked about the pensions for the Gurkhas. And Keir Starmer said, well, we're having discussions. Ministers have met for discussions over the pensions. And obviously any kind of shit that is given to the Gurkhas is really shit. John Lamont, who's a Scottish Conservative MP, talked about Peter Merrill and the inquiry into corruption, which was like, yeah, or whatever. Then we have Becky Gittins from Labour talking about dancing up and dancing to Wuthering Heights, whatever. Richard Frood from the Lib Dems asked for any tips for Keir Starmer's succession, and he said don't support austerity, because that's what the Lib Dems did when they were in with the Tories, don't forget. And also don't wear a wetsuit. And there was a question about the Windrush generation and Windrush Day. Then we had Wendy Morton, scrapping. She wants to talk about scrapping the grey belt policy, which is the outskirts of a city that are just where industry used to be, but for some reason it's regarded as green belt when it's not. And she talked about destroying his own legacy, and she said, well, you were the chief whip to Liz Truss, so you're not really one to talk about destroying your legacy there. And then finally, there was a question from Alistair Stratton, Labour MP, talking about male positive role models, and Starmer said, yeah, all right then. And then it ended. Then it was all over. So, friends, countries, Roman men, thank you very much for watching. I'm gonna bugger off now into the ether. I might pop back this afternoon and do a bit of writing. Sorry, Gallifrey and Renner didn't do any writing yesterday. A bunch of stuff came up, and it was also the 10th anniversary of Brexit, so there was some anti-Brexit shit to put together. Yeah, I'm not set up anything for this evening. So I might do a episode of The Rabbit Hole. I don't know. We will see. What I want you to do is, I would like it very much if you would give us a like. Please give me a like. Give us a like. Also hit the subscribe button, and also hit the bell notification icon. Then it'll tell you if I'm going to go live or not, whether or not. So thank you very much to Diz, One Angry Pagan, Gallifreyan Men, Bolskov in the chat, Andy in there, DJ Marcy Moo, Paulie Donkey, Jenny Robinson, everyone else, Black Andy. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, I will say I'll definitely be back tomorrow morning at 9. Whatever happens, might do a show later. So hit the bell notification. Hit the bell notification icon. Until next time, I'll say thanks for watching. Hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.